I recently went and saw the brand new live action adaptation of How to Train Your Dragon, a film that really I was pretty excited for. When I was a young lad, a young chap, a young skipper, I ate up How to Train Your Dragon. I loved that film. It impacted me, and to see it get its live action adaptation intrigued me, to say the least. This adaptation was also made like 20 minutes down the road from me, which is really cool. Really, really cool for the industry here too. So this also added to my anticipation, and I had some very good friends that I knew who also worked on the film, which again also added that anticipation for this adaptation. So all in all, the excitement levels were pretty high on my end. And then I watched it, and it was pretty good. But this bad boy was bar for bar, line for line, the exact same film, minus a few scenes, minus a couple that are here and there, but it still flows without them. Now, this has seen huge praise come this film's way from the internet and from the general masses. Maybe not as much from the critics, some labeling it as a kind of soulless adaptation of the original. But all in all, largely the internet and people are claiming that this is exactly what we want with these live action adaptations. The blueprint, as one would say, which is a fine thing to say. You're completely within your right to say that, and I'm not opposing that at all. And the reason for it is fundamentally, when you get down to it, How to Train Your Dragon is a good film. This adaptation is a good film. And the script and the story are still as strong as they were almost 10, 15 years ago when the original came out. We also need a new fantasy franchise to mark its territory on the box office. You know, we haven't really had anything in a long time when it comes to fantasy. We used to have like Harry Potter and Narnia and Lord of the Rings, but there's been nothing of the past few years. Now, it could be implied from my big but at the start of this that I wasn't a fan of this film, which on the contrary, I very much was. I very much enjoyed this piece of cinema. Mason Thames is a great hiccup, and the veteran actors like Nick Frost and Jared Butler really bring their A game and have a great chemistry with Mason Thames throughout the film. Jared Butler in particular. This chemistry and relationship with Butler and Thames allowed for the emotional beats of the film to hit even harder and hit just as hard as they did in the animated film. I also enjoyed the supporting cast. They each had sort of fun lines and fun moments that allowed them to stand out, but they sort of disappeared into the background and more focused on the central relationships, which is fair enough. They're there to support the story and add a bit of levity for the kids and the families to have a bit of fun while watching it. And I also enjoyed the slight expansion of Astrid, played by Nico Parker. They kind of delve a wee bit more into her and give her a bit more time, which is from the scenes that they originally cut. They sort of replaced it by adding a little bit more to Astrid, which was pretty cool. The visuals are quite good in this film as well. I love that they don't try to hide the dragons behind smoke and curtains. They are on full show throughout. And I also like that they stuck to the sort of cartoony design of Toothless. There was maybe a bit of a fear that they would make it more realistic, and I seen a video where the director talked about them discussing that aspect, but they opted to go for the more cartoony big eyes, which was a great choice and a very valid choice that allows that character to be more endearing. The flying sequences in this film are incredible. They are adrenaline raising, blood pumping, and gave me goosebumps, and to be honest, they're nearly worth the ticket price alone. That's how exciting they are, and that's how engaging and just full on that they are. They're really the best aspects of the adaptation here. Final piece of praise I want to give the film is the score. The score is exceptional. It's just as good as it was in the animated film, but they took the aspects of it and it's been heightened by John Powell to be more cinematic for the live action scale, and that choice is amazing. The music does a bit of heavy lifting for these emotional scenes as well. Not me saying that the story and the script and the acting is bad, because it's not. They really just are that final nail in the coffin for those scenes to hit. Alright, I hear you all audibly gasp in the comments section and watching the video while looking at your computer screens and your TV screens or your phone screens. This is a long list of compliments. You really like this film, and I did really like this film. Don't get me wrong, I'm a big fan. And I recommend going to see this film if you like the original. And I love the original. And even if you're looking for a new sort of entertaining, just kick back 2-hour enjoyable box office experience, you can't really go wrong with this film because it is entertaining in that way. But the fact that I talked about just remains in the back of my brain. This is large in part the exact same film as the one that came out 15 years ago. But then the question arises, How do you change and improve what is considered one of the best animated films of the past 20 years? But this idea fascinated me. Is this the path that we're going down, the path of adapting these films but just doing it exactly the same as the animated one? Because if the animated one is that good, what's the point in changing it? And that's a very valid argument. But I couldn't get this idea out of my head. And then I remembered that another animated film from the past 20 years has recently got a new live action adaptation. A new live action adaptation that people are not big fans of because they change too much. And I hadn't seen it, so... So, I set out on a rainy afternoon to the cinema. I bought my ticket, I sat down as a lonely individual in a screen that had families in it. It's not my proudest moment, really. And I watched the new adaptation of Lilo and Stitch. Now, folks, I did not hate this.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
Now, wait. Don't click off. Just wait. Hear me out. This is a flawed movie. I'm not gonna deny that. This is not perfect. And How to Train Your Dragon, when it comes down to it, is the better film. And I'm not gonna hide behind that fact. You see, Lilo and Stitch, this live action Lilo and Stitch, is the complete opposite side of the same spectrum with How to Train Your Dragon. It changes so much to the point where it's nearly a completely different film from start to finish, which has seen some major backlash from audiences and fans of the original, which is completely justified. You are allowed to be annoyed with some of the changes that they made to this film. Heck, I'm annoyed with some of the changes that they made to this film as well. Spoilers! Wow, if you're gonna watch this film, because I'm just gonna spoil the whole thing. I don't like the idea of making Jump with the film. Yes, it is a change that kind of serves the story in this circumstance, but it kind of betrays the narrative of the character in the original and the character itself in the original. So I'm not a fan of that change, as well as a few others, but that is the main one. But in saying this, I do not hate the change to make the focus of the film the sisterly relationship between Nani and Lilo. But then a problem arises. That problem is a little blue dude that's like really cool and is like the most entertaining part of the film. The original film is largely about found family and the idea of Ohana and family and not leaving people behind if they're family, which is something that the new film does not ignore. This is something that it still explores. But the reason the Ohana and the found family is such an interesting narrative device and focus and theme for the original is because the focus of the original is largely Stitch. This time around though, Stitch and his problems kind of take a back seat to the sort of family and sister dynamic that the focus of the film is now with Lilo and Nani, which is a shame because maybe with an extra 20 minutes they could have expanded this and sort of balanced the stories better. See, the major changes that this film really focuses on Nani to the point where you could argue that she's almost the main character. And that is an interesting choice as the film delves to try and make her a more expansive and well-rounded character, which she is in the original, but just sort of expand upon her and her wants and her needs and her struggles. I think this is largely because of the fact that you can only film with children for like a certain amount of time, and maybe it was expensive to make Stitch in live action, so choosing to focus more on Nani is just the more natural and practical choice for making this film. I'm gonna butcher the actresses' names, leave me alone. Sydney Agwad... Oh my god.
Snake? I'm a slithery little sneaky snake.
Sydney Aguadong and Maya Kaloa, who plays Lilo and Nani, have a great relationship, and they both do a great job in the film, and the film does a good job of portraying their relationship. And in concept, focusing on this is a good idea and a good way to differentiate yourself from the original. The film chooses to expand upon the death of the parents, which is something that the original film doesn't really delve into a huge amount. We also see that Nani gave up aspects of her life after the death of her parents to come back and look after Lilo, an example being a promising career in... what is it called? It's there, in my brain. It'll come to me. Marine biology, there it is. And because of this, don't shoot me guys, because of this, it allows for the plot point of Nani choosing to give up Lilo feel natural and feel like it doesn't come out of nowhere because it's established from the start and that idea is kind of there. But that's also the third act low point, guys, because you can't do the third act low point of Stitch leaving the same way because they changed Jumba and they took out the main bad guy from the original. I'm not trying to be the knight and patron saint of this film, because it's not perfect at all. As I stated, there are changes I am not a fan of, and this film doesn't need a savior. It's gonna continue making bank at the box office. This is a family film hit, okay? What I'm trying to say, and what I guess is the point of this video, is that I feel like there's a middle ground here. I don't think we've truly seen the potential of a live action adaptation truly fulfilled yet. We might have come close, because Jungle Book is quite good and that Cinderella is decent, and this How to Train Your Dragon is pretty good as well. But again, one of the most interesting aspects about these films coming out so close together is the fact that the director of How to Train Your Dragon has such a strong involvement with both of these films in different aspects. See, Dean Dubois, I'm gonna guess that's how you pronounce it. He co-directed the original Lilo and Stitch with Chris Sanders, who is involved in this Lilo and Stitch, while Dean Dubois is not at all. But saying that, Chris Sanders is only involved in a voice acting role. He's not a producer, he's not an executive producer, he's not a writer on this film. He is literally there to voice Stitch, and that is it. This adaptation was directed by Dean Fleischer Camp, who is known for directing the unbelievable Marcel the Shell with Shoes On. Let's not ignore this man's achievements. That is a fantastic film. And going off some of the interviews with him and Zach Galifianakis, there seems to be some sort of production troubles to do with studio interference, but that's not confirmed. But there's a lot of I trieds being thrown about in the discussions about this film in the interviews that we see, which is a shame, because I can kind of see the bones of the film that they were trying to make. I admire the team of Lilo and Stitch. I admire the fact that they tried to make changes to this film and create an adaptation that stands on its own 2 feet, separate from the original. Because at the same time, it's the same idea as How to Train Your Dragon. How do you adapt a film that is already considered perfect and make changes and make it its own thing? Well, you don't, you just adapt the original film. But there is admiration in the idea of a filmmaker taking the characters and taking the idea of the story and trying to make their own unique impact with it. And I'm not against that at all. But I also admire the How to Train Your Dragon team and the animation legend that is Dean Dubois and his adaptation, and it being so seamless and so clean, and it perfectly adapting to the live action format. Something that How to Train Your Dragon kind of has the benefit of doing, because I could see that in the live action adaptation even before there was an animated one. But that film in a way opens itself to criticism, because it is so similar to the animated film that it might leave people disappointed that it couldn't capture the magic of the original animated film. But then Lilo and Stitch is open to criticism because it changes far too much from the animated film. I'm going back to that idea. There are 2 films on opposite sides of the same spectrum. There is a middle ground here. There is a way that we can adapt these animated stories into live action stories that stand on their own 2 feet and can introduce the story to a new generation of people. And both of these films have positives and negatives to the approaches that they take. And that is the fundamental of this untapped potential. There is a way to make these films unique and original, but also true to the original. And you may ask me, right, do you have an example of a film that does this? And I'm going to say no, because I genuinely don't think there's been one yet that has achieved this goal. And I hope someday that we get it, but there's a good chance that we probably won't. And that the future of these adaptations are going to be the Lilo and Stitch kind, or the How to Train Your Dragon kind. So yeah, that's that. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe. I'll see you when I see you.